we are already seeing the impact on the market, with U.S. futures falling 1.5% at the moment. Of course, we haven't seen such a big move since April 1st. So we had heard from both sides that there had been progress. So what happened here?
Yeah, Sherry, a very interesting development today from President Donald Trump. From what we're hearing from our trade sources, there's been some growing frustration on the U.S. side, perhaps among the more hawkish elements of the U.S. trade team, about China sort of backtracking on some of its promises as this mammoth trade deal sort of supposedly comes toward a conclusion, that perhaps China's been backpedaling on issues like technology transfers and other very key things that the U.S. wants it to make promises on, and that President Trump has been getting very irritated by that. As we've talked about so many times over the months, it's always a bit unclear who's really running the U.S. trade show, whether it's the hawks or the doves, and at least for today, it seems like the doves are in command. Very, very critical talks coming up in Washington this week, and perhaps this was President Trump's best effort to really put it to China, to put the screws on. A little bit uncertain whether that's the negotiating tactic that will get the right result, because really nobody wants to negotiate with a gun against their head.
So, Ros, you mentioned negotiating tactics. Does it seem that maybe that's all this is from the president? And has there been any response from China so far?
Well, it certainly seems like this is a negotiating tactic. This is a big kind of opening salvo for this critical week of talks. We haven't heard very much from China so far. Obviously, it's very early in the morning there. We've had a little bit of editorial rumbling from some of the newspaper reporters there. But, you know, at essence, very interesting comments from President Trump on Friday. He talked up this deal. He hoped it would be going ahead. But, you know, he also said, and maybe this is a little bit of a tell, that he said if it doesn't happen, we'll be fine to maybe even better. So this is sort of tariff man Trump. He's been a little bit on the sidelines recently. Perhaps this is his last gasp. We did have Larry Kudlow, the National Economic Director, on Fox News earlier this afternoon, sort of trying to downplay this. But at the same time, U.S. business groups coming out, they're very upset, especially about the suggestion that there will be another $325 billion dollars in Chinese imports subject to tariffs. And basically that would be every lock, stock, and iPhone that China ships to the U.S. Many of these products have been exempt so far. You could certainly expect to see consumer goods lobbying groups and big publicly traded companies all coming out against this, you know, today, if not over the week.
Ross, so Vice Premier Liu He returns to Washington on Wednesday. What can we expect to be discussed in this round of negotiations, and will it be the last?
Well, you know, there was a lot of sense, or a sense from the White House, that this was the last gasp, that there could even be the broad framework of a trade deal announced as soon as Friday. It certainly puts Mr. He, you know, in a very, very tricky situation. But I would expect that some of those sort of most thorny issues like technology transfers, possibly even talking about currency manipulation, could be discussed this week. And, you know, we kind of always knew that the hardest elements would be left to last. But, you know, now the negotiations are starting, you know, really on a pretty defensive note from China. I think, you know, very likely we'll hear something from Beijing later this morning, and, you know, just have to wait and see.